Hello, Steef-Jan. Welcome to Integration Love Story. Thank you
Hello,
for joining us today.
I'm
Uh,
privileged. So thank you for having me.
for our audience, we of course we know you, and we have been following you for years now. But if you can give our audience a minute and can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, well, I'm Steef-Jan. I'm from the Netherlands. I've been visiting your country, Sweden, quite a while. As many of you know, background is, of course, integration. Personally, I live in the center of Holland, so near a national forest called Hoge Veluwe. So it's pretty green around me and my surroundings, so that's cool. Got two dogs, three kids. So I live on my I live with them, so we're still in this house. Unfortunately, my wife, as you know, has passed away a year or more or so. So, yeah, I'm now what they call a single dad. Um, Fortunately, I did find someone new in my life as well, so that's all going good. She lives pretty close by, so that's nice to have as well. And yeah, well, as you know, my day-to-day job is integration, and sometimes I also do some writing for InfoQ. So some of your people that would be familiar with that. So it's a media site that does like cloud technology, culture and methods, architecture, programming languages, and machine learning and AI. So that's kind of what their focus group is. And I predominantly write things around the cloud. So
Thank
yeah,
you
that's
for
a bit about my
mentioning
background.
also. Yeah, and thank you for mentioning this part about your private life because I think you are an amazing example of how life should
Mhm.
go on and how to get balance or with everything despite hard times and how to create good times out of hard times.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
just want to say that sorry about what happened, and yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're okay.
Yes,
Mm.
definitely am. Yeah.
But you talked about that you live in central of Holland where everything is green, and I think that you mentioned green because you is there something that you what do you do when you don't write about integration and talk in podcasts like this and you work with
Well,
integration?
that's nice of you to ask. I'm also very active in sports, so I do field hockey. So that's not the same as ice hockey. I think ice hockey is bigger in the Nordics, also Sweden. They're very good at it. We play a different type of hockey, so that's not on an ice skating ring, but it's on an artificial soccer pitch, I would say. So it's not grass, but it's artificial grass.
Mm.
So that's what I play. I frequently run, so I have a few races coming up, like a half marathon and a full marathon next year.
Mm.
And the other thing I like to do is diving. So I got certified last year in Hawaii, and yeah, I've been joining a dive club, and I will also next year in January go diving in Bonaire. So yeah, that's another thing I do.
Sounds amazing.
That's a busy man. I get that.
But let's just have a quick question regarding running. If you run,
Yes,
do you run with or without music?
I always run with music. So I have the those AirPods
Yeah.
from Apple, and then I have a playlist. So yeah, usually I run with music. It's very comforting, and I like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. That's yeah. I've started to switch actually. Some runs I do without music because I want to
okay,
hear something else. But yeah, it's also nice to hear what other people do.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I definitely don't want to hear my own thoughts. So I would.
Okay, that's what I try to be comfortable with. So that's why I run without music. But okay. Okay, yeah, but so as Ahmed said, we're really glad to have you here, and we want to, of course, talk about integration, but also a bit
yeah,
about everything else. So,
sure.
but which question to start with, Ahmed?
Yeah, I was thinking about now. Let's should we maybe dive in a little bit into the technique and what we actually our community and
Yeah.
talk about Azure.
Hmm.
So, what kind of like I know that you have been talking lately, shifting focus a little bit from architecture and like you been the migration, and then lately I've been shifting focus.
Mm.
So currently, what would you say that your favorite Azure tool? Because Azure is like a stack with tools that we combine to create integration. So
Mm.
what's your favorite?
Well, since I'm an old man, I would say Visual Studio. It's pretty. It's okay when you do Logic App thing consumption. You can still pull that template off and do some stuff, but predominantly you use basically Visual Code.
Yeah.
When it comes to functions, but I still write some functions in my integrations or for my integrations. And then, of course, I think Visual Studio is still the best tool to work with,
Mm.
and view connectivity. Some of the other tools that are very useful or helpful is the Storage Explorer,
Mm.
for instance. It's another great tool. If you would save an Azure tool, Service Bus Explorer is always an interesting tool. I've used it many years. You probably as well.
Mm.
Partially, it's now also embedded in the portal experience. Although I think the on-prem version by Paolo Salvatore is still, one of the best.
Yeah.
So I think some of those tools are pretty okay. And then, of course, Postman, but that's not really an Azure tool. That's
Mm.
more now new to test your APIs and such. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that everyone can relate to listening to this, working with integration. That the tools you mentioned is like, yeah, those are the tools that you need.
Yeah, and
Yep.
he didn't mention AI, so I was nice. That's
So maybe,
No, I think your Copilot. I haven't used that much. ChatGPT or something. Yeah, it can definitely help you jumpstart your documentation, for instance.
Mm.
So your architecture design records, for instance, to jumpstart them, put some anything in, and then of course you revise it and add some more stuff on your own.
Mm.
But coming to AI, that's about it. So I haven't used much generative AI yet, but you never know.
No. And I guess that we should do a shout out to Salvatore because I agree with you. That's like the first tool I download when you work with integration. So
yeah.
shout
Yeah,
out. The integration world is using your tools. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Yes. Cool.
Um, but yeah, so working with Azure and working with integrations and as much years that you have
Mhm.
been working with, do you have any memorable mistakes that you can share with the community for us to both know, but also, of course, to learn about some mistake?
Well, a bigger mistake is when you build an integration supporting a process and going along with that process. That's a pretty complex one.
Mm.
You end up with one big logic app, similar to what you could have done with BizTalk back in the day, building an orchestration
Mm.
um,
Mm.
that would be like several pages long, right? And that's not correct.
Mm.
So because you're so much focused in solving that problem or getting that complex thing running, you basically tend to shortcut it by putting everything in that one single
Mm.
logic app, which is not smart at all because it
Mm.
becomes hard to debug, etc.
Mm.
So, and then you start to realize that you may have to zoom out and maybe think about cutting up your process or your workload in smaller pieces, right? And I think, hey, maybe I should do some call outs to different logic app because you can call one logic app, can call another one, right?
Mhm.
And then just defragment it just to make it a little bit more less bulky, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you're in the zone and you're like, I need to solve it, and deploy, and then once you got it running, but then you look like, oh, I've really created a monster. Sometimes that's the mistake. Well, and what you learn from the mistake is sometimes you need to step back and look at the problem and start to understand what the problem or process is, and maybe think about, hey, maybe I should cut it up in different little parts.
Mm.
And we did that eventually, and then our process got bigger, and it was easy to debug, and then it was also easier to maintain in the end. You do create some dependencies because you got your master logic app and all those dependent logic apps, so you have to deploy the dependent logic apps first before you deploy the big one. Otherwise, the big one will say, "Hey, I can't find the little ones."
Mm.
You probably know what I mean. So
Yeah, we know, but still, it's I know the. But
mm,
I remember when I was I mean developing logic apps and that question also to like
yeah,
break up the integrations to
yeah,
smaller pieces. But it was also quite hard when you talk with your colleague or someone else that
yeah,
Mm.
where to cut, where should I, what
yeah.
is a big, what is an okay piece?
Oh, I totally agree because I think in the end, we had a good setup, but because we're so hung up in solving that process, and there was, of course, time pressure, and then before you know it, you're on that train, and then you forget about taking a step back and then think about, wait a minute, some of these things that in that process were just call outs like a lookup and stuff, and shouldn't put everything in that one single logic app. But hey,
Mm.
you can always make that mistake. It's no
Yeah.
Yeah.
problem.
Yes. It's. I have been getting wiser lately. I don't know. I'm getting older or wiser. Not sure about the
Mhm.
exact
Yeah.
correlation there, but it's more like I've started to pay more
Hmm.
attention to the business process before even
Yeah.
Yeah.
judging the mistake, because that's what we have been like when you're running 100 miles per
Mm.
hour and
Yeah.
you need to fix, as you said, deploy.
Mm.
I think we need to put the foot down sometime and say, okay, wait a minute, hey, how the business process looks like,
Mm.
and then start work from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, partially the mistake was also made because the process wasn't entirely clear from the get-go. So what we started building anyhow, and then you create a monster too. So the
Yeah.
other thing would be really have a good vision or a good understanding of the process itself. But even the customer didn't understand that process. So
Yeah, but that's like, yeah, we've been talking about a lot in this podcast, or
Mhm.
actually, like every episode we mentioned like the business value. How
Yeah.
can we as integrators actually take more consideration of the business value? Because we like technique, we like to solve problems, but
Hmm.
how can we also love do the business parts? Because then we have a good integration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
True.
But like but now, like if we want to take, because now I'm getting curious. You know, we know that you did a mistake and you are insanely busy, as you also play 3 kids,
Mm.
dogs, diving in deep seas,
Mm.
and running
Mhm.
marathons. That's a lot of things happening here.
Mm.
So, but you still also a very relevant in the community, and like having a big heart on this
Mm.
community, and adding, and like having
Mhm.
the energy to continue with that. Like, how do you cope, and what actually, where did this that made you stand out, you decide that I will keep doing this,
Mm.
to share with the community, to put energy on my career, to put energy, where
Probably.
can you identify this, the most career, like the most thing that you like successful story?
I think that goes back almost 25 years when I went into the IT.
Mm.
And initially, I started programming, doing some front end stuff, but I hated that. So,
Mm.
and then I moved more towards the back end and databases, and I really love that. And having some programming knowledge and database knowledge, I eventually in 2005, so let's say 5, 6 years of my career in, and encountered BizTalk Server as a product. Also having some affinity with networking and security and of course, messaging as well. I kind of embraced that product, but I can also easily understand the product.
Mm.
Already having the traits of being able to program and having database knowledge.
Mm.
And then it was just a pretty easy stepping stone getting to the BizTalk world. And I found out I was pretty good at it as well.
Mm.
And I liked it. And that's important too, right? You really love, you're at some point within IT, it's very broad that at some point you're like, yeah, this is what I really like.
Mm.
And it happened to be integration. So also to do with business, with processes and stuff. And I like processes. I
Yeah.
try to understand them and make them work.
Yeah.
And then and BizTalk is also a pretty good tool for that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you start blogging about it, and then ultimately at forums you start answering questions. And then at some point, Microsoft thought, "Hey, this is a person who does a lot of work for the community and helping other people out. So we think he is valuable. So
Mm.
let's make him an MVP." And that was in 2010, and then I started speaking on stage, and I was afraid to be on stage, but I thought, hey, to get over that fear, you need to be on stage. So
Mm.
I did that. And yeah, going forward, you start meeting other people, people you know from the community, which is fine as well. And then, yeah, because of meeting people and interacting and mingling with people, yeah, got you into where I am today. I still love it. So,
But
That
I need to ask. I mean, you said that you realized 5 6 years in that you both loved it, but also like you understood that you were good at it. How do
yeah,
you remember what was the key? Like, I actually understand this better than other people. What was that?
um, I think maybe the database part predominantly because I was very into databases. So I started programming, but I also was a database administrator, and I wrote like tons and tons of SQL code,
Mm.
and of course installed it and understood the whole database tree and everything underneath it. So because of that understanding, I think because it's a myriad of things, right? It's not just a database; it's also tech, Windows services, XML code, all that brought together.
Mm.
And I just understood it, and
Yeah.
because of that understanding, because it's a myriad of things, right? It's just not one thing.
Yeah.
Also having to install it quite frequently, so there's so many facets on it, like different things around BizTalk, and
Mm.
I just got the hang of it. So and then I thought, hey, I can do this well. So
Yeah. And then you started to blog about it, but that's also a question that I'm interested in. What made you actually start thinking that I can actually contribute, and I
Yeah.
think I should start blogging? Because I mean, I guess that a lot of people have that fear of what do even I why can I contribute? But if no one does it, then no one does it. But what made you do the blogging and start typing?
Well, because back in the day with BizTalk, there wasn't so many information out there. So I thought, I just write some stuff down that I have experienced or try it out. So,
Mm.
and there were some other BizTalk people like Richard Sirota, Stephen Thomas. Back in the day, my heroes. I didn't know him. I knew them later on in life, became good friends. But yeah, just add stuff to it. Going forward, of course, the BizTalk books came, right, and more information became available. So then that burden of finding information became less and less. But initially, it did. And it was so that's why I thought, I might as well chip in and join in and bring some of my experience to the table. Yeah, so the only thing back in the day was writing. There was no podcast, there were no YouTubes, there was nothing.
No,
Yeah,
it's
I
It was
remember
just blog.
when I started to learn about BizTalk, there was nothing, and that wasn't long ago. It was just 2015.
yeah,
I didn't know much about BizTalk and integration back then, and then it was really hard to find,
yeah.
even
Hmm.
with the books out and with some blogs,
Mm.
but it was not that easy.
Mm.
I even wrote a BizTalk book myself, BizTalk Server
Really?
20 book. Yeah,
Yeah,
How many books did you sell?
I have no clue. Until today, I still get some royalties, and that
Oh,
allows me to buy a coffee once a month or so. But hey,
you celebrate your book by spending a coffee. Maybe those ones are
still
yeah.
it still sells after 15 years. So
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, even as you said, I
mhm,
mean, now there's blogs, there's podcasts, but still,
yeah,
I am the one that actually picks up a books once in a while because I like reading
hmm,
by the book
yeah,
also. So yeah, but I wanted to dig a bit deeper in the. I mean, you've been blogging. We've been seeing you on several stages.
Mm.
I've seen you in Stockholm. I've seen you in
yeah.
London, and I know that you're traveling a lot. Can you like name the top three places that that you were at because of your blogging and speaking and your contribution to inspire the community to actually start contributing?
Oh, I really enjoyed being on stage in Australia at one point. So
Mm.
that was Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane,
Mm.
and later on also Auckland.
Mm.
But I also spoke like for Technorama here in the Netherlands, and I was on stage right in my own hometown. So I was the only local speaker. So I was like speaking 500 meters from my home, versus Auckland being 18,000 kilometers from my home. So
Yeah.
I spoke in distant places and I spoke in very close places. So
Which was the strangest one, if you can name it?
that would be, well, Auckland in one way, because you're at the other end of Earth, right, or of our planet, and then you're just speaking to a whole different group of people and culture and everything. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
yeah.
But like I wanted to know, like success story now. Let me refer. We went to
Mm,
the how you went and how you blogged,
Mm.
and the success story, because I remember one comment you told me in London.
mm,
I don't think that you even remember that you said that comment,
mm,
or you, because your session was about one of your session was like in this year. I think it was this year or last year. I don't remember, but it was about migration. You had the migration project, successful migration project,
Mm.
and
yeah.
it was up there, and it was, you made it really good, and you have been pointing out all the like how to succeed in a migration project.
Mm.
And I have been in migration projects. I know that you cannot just succeed on that. And I was like, I want to know what's your magic recipe. Like, what? How did you like manage to actually simplify it, and also, uh,
Oh, I think you mentioned the retailer where we migrated their new way broker, which is similar to BizTalk, to a
yeah.
solution in the cloud.
Mhm.
We started basically very small,
Mm.
um,
Mm,
thinking about how can we move data from A to B, and then we found out that if you look at business server, there are several phases, right? So
Mm.
we thought maybe just do something like a claim check pattern or pipes and filters, having each function do its own thing, right?
mm,
One does invalidation or transforming to or from a canonical.
Mm.
Um, you leveraging event grid as a ways of notifying the next service that it needs to do something, and the payload is always being taken from a container.
Mm.
Yeah.
So in that paradigm, I used in a way that it became very flexible as well. Besides transformations, you can also do other small steps inside a function. You can chain them together in any way possible you want, because it's pretty small, as in what you would say a microservices type of architecture, but also flexible in a way you can add 5 functions, but also 10.
Mm.
As long as each function does its own thing. So the single role of responsibility, right? So one function only does transformation, the other one does only validation.
Mm. But
And that setup, we tried out and it worked out fine. And it was very robust, and it was able to also do a lot of high, these big workloads with low latencies.
mm.
So, and that's because with functions, compared to logic apps, when we started, you're able to dimension them under a premium SKU or even dedicated, so you can turn the knobs. There's nothing wrong with logic apps, but when we started, logic apps only was consumption with standard and preview, and preview became, of course, GA. And then with a logic app standard, you only have 3
Mm.
plans you can work with. So, and function still gives you a little bit more flexibility
Yeah.
when it comes to dimensioning and sizing of your compute predominantly. And if you got big workloads and you need to process them fast, then
Yeah.
logic app with service bus, doing simpler with claim check pattern you can,
Mm.
but it just gives you more latency than functions.
Yeah. So that would be I actually wanted to ask what's your advice on when to choose logic apps and when to choose functions, but I guess
Yeah. So
that
now we got the answer.
you
Yeah.
already answered
Yes,
that.
And we already know what's his favorite
performance.
food, kind of.
Yeah, I remember that picture, and I remember the session. It was an
Yeah.
integrate this year, yeah, and I remember that there was no logic apps there. I guess, and I guess that you answered it now.
Yeah. My question to you was back then was like, did you actually manage to deliver that on time? Because it sounded big, and that was you said me absolutely not.
No, we chunked it up in different parts, right? So also from a domain-driven paradigm as well. So we did um, products, pricing, shelf life. So there were different domains, and we just picked one domain, build our integration, deployed, and then we did the next, and then just built upon um, our experience and everything we've done in the first domain, we take to the next domain. So
Yeah.
we just like we call it cutting up an elephant in all small pieces, because you can eat an elephant better in small pieces than you can just eat the elephant by itself.
Yeah,
Just a figure of speech.
but
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 that's how our approach was.
yeah,
Mm.
but speaking of such a project, I mean, what's your what's your take, or actually, what was the success there? But I'm speaking about roles, and I'm speaking about who should
No.
be involved in the everyday process with such a project. Do you think?
Well, of course, you got your integration architect, more or less, slash product owner. So I had those roles. So I was partially in contact with the business and partially with the developers,
Mm.
aligning them on what needs to be built first and prioritization and such.
Mm.
And then within that team, of course, you have engineers, one or two that build integration, one that focus a bit more on the CI/CD and deployability part,
Mm.
and also the ops thing, because as soon as you got some integrations running, you need to maybe have bugs as well. So those bugs needs to be solved.
Mm.
And within our team, we also had 2 functional consultants that were very well versed in how retail businesses work.
Yeah.
So we had several roles in that team, but that made it successful because we had functional people in our team too, which are to our disposal 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So that's why our velocity was pretty high, because when we're facing, let's say, a retail type of issue or we didn't understand, we could straight away call those guys,
Mm.
say, hey, this is going on in that particular integration. Oh yeah, we know what it means because
Mm.
there's something with supplement, or hey, this field had to be mapped as well. So because of that, instant access to people from let's say the business itself, or
Mm.
people that know all those processes functionally and
Mm.
know all the data types. Yeah, that helped. So that was also a critical success factor,
Yeah.
having those people in your team 24/7. So we had a team of 2 functional guys, 3 developers, 1 integration architect slash product owner, and then also from time to time a network person, or
Mm.
someone that can give you access to Active Directory and such. And
Yeah.
there was also someone from the SPAR, and he was you can like this. If you ask something, things, were done for you.
Yeah.
And that's why it became such a successful team because, the culture was great too. We created a culture of not blaming, but more like, hey, if something goes wrong, we learn from it and we move forward instead of, oh, you did that wrong. Oh, that's not good. No, we learn from our mistakes, and there
Yeah.
was no problem. Everyone can make mistakes, and that's part of your DevOps culture. And we just learned from our mistakes and moved forward. So
That sounds that's yeah
It's
it's amazing. It's an amazing story, and I guess that the most we've all been in projects which was
yeah,
successful and unsuccessful, but I mean
yeah, but this success, I like it because if I take one lesson from all of this is I need to
Mhm.
set the more like the frame for the communication because here the
yeah
Yeah,
communication was the key actually,
yeah
and get the right people into the right place, and it's not
exactly.
not
yeah.
the architect or the developer who decide how the business process should look like.
No,
It's different people and functional people and technical. It's
And I mean, digging into mistakes and us like blaming each other is, I mean,
yeah
we all know that that doesn't help, but still,
no,
we do it sometimes, but it's never productive. So
no, that's correct.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, but now we jump. I guess that we jump from your retail success story at Integrate, but we jump to Stockholm, and I mean your session
Hmm.
there. You talked about. I'm gonna do a bit of a jump there. Like you talked a
Yeah,
lot
good.
about how sustainability comes into integration part, but please, for anyone who wasn't there, try to sum up what was that session and why did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I talked about sustainability because also within integration, right, you're building your solutions, you have your environments like dev, test, acceptance, production, and so on, and you're running workloads. Now, with Green IT, you want to look at which workloads do I run where. Maybe with some of the environments you can spin them up and then tear them down again, so you're not wasting any resources.
Mm,
Um, that was part of the talk as well, just to give you some insights that you can do that stuff because consuming means you're leveraging what the cloud provider offers and hence compute and such.
mm,
Hence also you're consuming energy. Now energy can or cannot be very dirty depending on also what your cloud provider uses. Now Sweden, for instance, does have one of the most green data centers, so you're good in that area. The other thing is that I wanted to make people think about running your workloads and when and what not to use. Serverless, for instance, is a very good thing for being more greener because then you scale up and down automatically, that kind of thing. So yeah, bring that into people's mind and have them think about that aspect as well when they start architecting or engineering solutions.
mm.
So that was basically in a nutshell what my talk was about. So yeah.
And how do you think that the companies out there, I mean, a lot of companies around the world is moving to cloud, and how do you think that how and why should they bring this up to the agenda regarding, I mean,
I
cloud?
think they will eventually because one of the bigger trends that goes on as well with cloud is financial operations, right? So what you consume in the cloud and what it costs. If you start more cost aware and building solutions that have value and run them at times when they need to run, then and try to save cost, you indirectly also are being more green aware because
Yeah,
FinOps and Green Ops or Green IT go hand in hand.
yeah, that it's a positive consequence of
Yeah,
being cost aware.
yeah, but
yeah,
it have been many years now where tech, we got away with a lot as tech people because
hmm,
we didn't really think about them. We
yeah,
didn't really need to do that, and
Mm.
it wasn't even like a question. Like people will look
mm,
strangely at you if you just mention this
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
solution.
yeah,
But now it's not like that, and I like it
mm,
because it wasn't visible. It's not still
right.
not visible,
mm,
but I see people are getting more aware about, oh, you need
Mhm.
to sort your trash in this certain way because of the environment.
mm,
Yeah, what about your servers? What
yeah,
to do with them?
yeah,
It's not like that
Mm.
servers are trash. Just
yeah.
you get what I mean.
Yeah, but I read some article about how big of an impact the I mean the server cloud
Mm.
services and servers would be in at the moment and also in
Mm.
several years. So I guess that
Yeah,
it's a very good point to
yeah,
put out there. And as you said, I mean, if you are aware of your cost and bring in a FinOps mentality, then you're also saving resources and then you're also being more green. So
true. And then the other thing you could potentially do, run your workloads at certain points in time, if possible, depending on your processes, right?
mm,
And then run them, if possible, in a data center that's more greener. But then again, you're depending on compliance rules as well. And the other is your business, right? If your business demands certain process to run 24/7 and it need to be up and like the latency stuff, then yeah, then it's going to be a hard sell to say no. We're only going to run them at some point in time because of
Yeah.
like order to cash flows. It's a little bit hard to say. Oh, we're only going to run them at 9 in the evening because then the power is the most greenest. You can't do that, but
Mm.
there are other batch type of processing that you might can decide to say, hey, we run them at a certain point in time because then the energy is the greenest, or we can run them in a different data center because that's greener.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
That's
it.
But
It's more.
it all depends.
yeah, definitely.
We should start do that here in all our cities because Sweden we have great also. Then we should
Yeah.
be having this more and more on the table now. And
Definitely,
Hmm.
we should have it on. I mean, as integrators,
Yeah.
I mean, as integrators, but not also like a huge Azure. I mean,
mm,
we work with Azure all the time, so we should definitely make this something that
Yeah.
we're aware of.
True.
Yeah. So yeah, good. I mean, I think that we have like. Do you have any other questions? Otherwise, we have like not two topics left to cover. But do you have any
Okay.
other question before
no,
we?
I don't have any other questions. I wanted to just no, the last one about the green
Mhm.
Yeah.
solutions
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
like your advice where people should start to look into that and
Mm.
where they should they start and how what like when you say that an architect should start think about it on their design,
Mhm.
what do you mean by that? Where should they start to look,
Mm.
read, or like do you have any tips for?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's the Green Software Foundation. So that's greensoftware.foundation, I think .com, where
Mhm.
you can, and it's a free website, right? So the Green Software Foundation is where you can really do reading, like what you're suggesting, right? What people could do.
Mm.
It also has, I think, probably a reference to where you can read and answer a couple of questions and such, and then you become green certified, or at least you have quite of a grasp of the foundational stuff around green software. So I think that's definitely a good starting point, and it's just easy accessible. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I can recall I saw something about that in FinOps Foundation.
Mm. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
FinOps Foundation is something similar to you
yeah.
got your Green Software Foundation, you got the FinOps Foundation. So yes, yeah.
Yeah. But that's great. Before we jump into the second last topic, if
Mhm.
our I mean, for those who might not know you and where to follow you, where should we follow you if you want to see what you are doing and what you're up to?
I think predominantly it would be a LinkedIn because I post quite some stuff on LinkedIn, also
Mm.
through what I do for InfoQ. So that's definitely where you definitely can follow me and what I do.
Mm.
Mm.
Um, yeah, of course you got X or Blue Ski, right? I think I'm more started to become more active on Blue Sky than on X.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
new. I didn't catch up with that, and I don't know. Is it getting that big?
it's getting bigger. People moving a bit away from X predominantly because Trump. Well, no, I don't think that much the Trump, but Elon Musk with
Mm.
quite the advertisement as such. But on the other end, you can knock out Elon Musk pretty easily because you just block his account and then you get rid of all the advertisement of his company anyhow. So it's not
Yeah,
of a big of a problem, or. But yeah, it definitely has to do with the way he profiles himself on his own platform, which might put people off and
Mm.
or people like looking for an alternative to X. So yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So follow you on LinkedIn and and what was the name?
yeah, Blue Ski and
Blue
X.
Sea. Blue
Blue
Sea.
Sky.
Okay.
Instagram is a closed account, but it's more private. That's
Yeah.
only pictures
Yeah.
of me and my girlfriend and
Yeah.
diving and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff and running. But yeah.
Do you know now where's your next session's gonna be? I mean, speaker session. Do you have any planned?
Ooh, I haven't really looked into
Hmm.
what I might do next year. I hope to go to Sweden again because I like that Nordic Integration Summit very much. So
Yeah.
that's definitely one on the list. Yeah, maybe integrate. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. We will have a lookout.
Yeah,
But,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
but we will see. We'll see you definitely, but like in
yeah,
many other occasions. That's
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
happen soon, and
definitely.
follow you on Blue Sky.
Yeah.
yeah.
But then let's go to the. I mean, the name of this podcast is Integration
Yeah.
Love Story, and now let's dig into that question. I mean, you mentioned it a bit, but let's just put it
Mm.
out there. Do you remember your integration love story? Where did you fall in love in integration, and why did you fall in love with integration?
Integration, not the software. It's like that. This was like, oh my god, this is integration. When you
Yeah,
actually got to know that this is integration.
Well, if you're like more into backend systems and processes, then you start to fall in love with the fact that yeah, you're integrating, you're allowing systems to communicate. So I once even did a session on that system communicate. But yeah, that's what I love about integration is that systems can exchange information with each other, and as an integration person, you can make that happen,
yeah,
which makes you a person of interest because a lot of companies deal with the fact that their systems need to communicate. So a lot of things within companies, the fact is that most of the time what they're facing is an integration problem.
yeah.
And
Do you have any like story where you like a certain like flow where you actually felt like wow?
yes, actually it is. That's called a basically a taxi project. It's like registering when, in this case, not a lorry driver, but a cab driver is driving. And at
Yeah.
some point in time, he needs to take a rest as well.
Mm,
And because before there were like any systems in place,
mm,
those taxi drivers could drive 24/7, which is not good because they don't rest. It becomes a problem or a risk while they're driving, right? Because they become tired. And
Mm.
that's also not good for, the people they're moving around.
yeah,
Yeah.
So what the government decided is that there was this little device that needed to be put in the car with a personalized card in it.
mm,
And then he could drive, and then he would just like a tachograph. So he would register when you're driving and not.
Mm.
And for that, you had to have a system that allows you to obtain that card to put in the machine.
yeah,
And that became an integration scenario where BizTalk server had to send out information to check if the person actually was someone who lives in the Netherlands, if the person's car was actually insured,
mm,
Mm.
if the car itself had a proper license plate,
mm,
and if the person had also a driver's license. So if those were all in check,
Okay.
then an encrypted message went to a manufacturer of that personalized card,
yeah,
and then a personalized card was created, and of course then the person could collect it.
yeah,
But that whole process of getting that card created, that was a pretty interesting integration scenario that I built,
yeah,
calling out different government agencies and such, and we had to work with
Can imagine.
encryption. So it was
yeah,
very, very challenging because some of those protocols were not supported in BizTalk. So we had to get Chilcut components to do the encryption and decryption and all that stuff. So yeah, it was pretty amazing.
yeah,
Got it done. You got it done. And the process was there. And eventually, yeah, we were ready, steady, go. Unfortunately, the certificate authority DigiNota got hacked. That was pretty big news back in the day. So we had to wait for another one.
yeah,
So the bill, or at least the whole legislation around this device,
mm.
was put on hold for 3 months before they found another certificate authority, and then eventually we went live. But yeah, that was an amazing project.
Sounds
That's
yeah.
Mm.
Everyone listening and watching this, you can see that you actually feel that that
Yeah.
was an amazing project.
no, but it
we,
is
we always have, yeah. I mean, I still do, but it's so amazing to watch
Mhm.
like
like can
glow
imagine
up.
imagine now if this the process that you just described now,
Mm,
the whole process. If imagine if someone actually was running around doing this, like collecting those
Mhm.
papers. This is what was running in my head now. It's
yeah,
like this will
Yeah.
be a person who's actually running around all of those government
Yeah.
facilities and
knocking
collect.
doors.
Yes, exactly. Can you please sign this? Can you please sign this?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's really cool.
But yeah, like, I guess
Yeah.
that was the questions we had. But
Okay.
we want more questions to the next show, and I guess that Ahmed. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, we would like, yes, because we would like some help to keep this
Mhm.
podcast going, and
Sure.
we would like you to give us some tips for the next guest. We don't have a name for the next guest yet.
mm,
Okay.
We are having conversation with some people, but we didn't determine exactly who is the next. So if you just have an open question
mm,
out of curiosity to the next guest, what would it be?
I would say what integration patterns that he or she uses the most, or is really under the, or something where they applied a pattern, integration pattern, book from the big integration pattern book by Gregor Hobe.
mm,
They applied in a project that they really liked.
mm. Integration.
Patterns are always interesting. So I think,
Yeah.
and they're set there in this big book. I met Gregor Hope in London. I met him in San Francisco recently again. So that's pretty interesting. This, and even had a picture with him. So usually I don't care. But this person, this guy, Gregor is really cool, and he wrote that book, and it's such an amazing book, and it gets all the patterns you think about integration. Yeah, and I would say, hey, what integration pattern did you use, or are you in love with because you think, hey, this is great for a certain project you did, or projects maybe even.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
That's
that would be my question.
So shout out to Salvatore and
Yeah.
shout out to Greg.
yeah.
Greg, yeah.
Yes, and it's really thank you. It's really good question.
Yeah. Okay.
I really don't think about these things when we talk to other people. Like,
Yeah,
what's your pattern?
What's your pattern? What's your favorite pattern? Let's talk about
Yeah.
that for 2 hours. That's it.
Well, hey, you can definitely derive a lot of information, a lot of things out of the answer of the person. If you
Yeah,
talk about
Yeah,
patterns.
sure.
yeah, definitely,
That's
definitely.
that's great. So thank you for
Okay.
joining us today.
Yeah,
And
Thank you as well.
it was an amazing conversation. I like
Yeah.
that. We definitely will have to look back into that and watch it several times and get all the
Okay.
lessons from it
yeah,
because you have been sharing amazing stories.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hope to have you
Thank
again,
you.
and
Sure.
all the best. All the best.
Yeah.